history yourself, and you'll be amazed and empowered at how many women, on the backs of how many women, just like men, this deen has been carried. It didn't reach us just because of the contributions of men. It reached us because of the contributions. To answer this, first, obviously, being a student of Quran, when somebody brings up an issue, I think about the Quran and I think about how would somebody who's navigated and scanned the entire book of Allah, how would they respond to this? The second place you'd go is like the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, and say, how were women in the Prophet's life? What roles were they playing? How were they participating? The third place you'd go is, we have a very vast history in Islam, right? We're not just one continent or one culture or one nation, one language. We span every continent, and we have a rich history in every continent. How were Muslims that were committed to their religion, men and women, playing their roles in all these different places throughout history? And if you scan all three, and you, with exceptions here and there, in the Quran, for example, there is no place where women are not being given or being put in a certain kind of cage. In the family, Allah did make men the head of the household. That is a leadership responsibility Allah gave men, which is why they're called qawwam, caretakers. And so they are responsible, and that's why they have to be financially responsible. So there's a leadership role there. But then there are other places in which women are taking leadership roles. Like at a very micro level, when Musa's mother lost Musa alayhi salam in the water, she also had Harun. Harun is the brother, but she sent the sister to go, because Harun's the older brother, so he already exists. But she sends the sister to go, and she takes the lead and goes and all the way follows Musa alayhi salam to the castle, and then, you know, even recommends that they bring the mother back. So the entire story rests on the intelligence of this little girl, who we recite about in Surah Al-Qasas. There are small examples, glimpses like this in the Quran, where women are outspoken, where women express themselves. What are the principles? The principle in Islam, Allah did not say women should, remain hidden. In fact, even the ayah وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ in Surah Al-Ahzab is talking about Ummahatul Mu'minin, it's talking about the mothers of the believers. And there's a reason for that, because they are considered our mothers forever. There's a reason they were given special instructions. In that same surah, Allah says, لَسْتُنَّ كَأَحَدٍ مِّنَ النِّسَاءِ, you're not like any other women. That's why they had, and no other woman will always be considered the entire ummah's mother. They cannot marry any other man after them. If they just walk around outside, even if they're fully covered, and some man says, I wonder if she's married, he's having a thought about his mother. Allah wants to prevent that completely from even happening, ever. So He tells them, وَقَرْنَ فِي بُيُوتِكُنَّ. So even when the Sahaba come to meet with Aisha radiallahu anha, min wara'i hijab, she has to meet them from behind a curtain. She's not seeing anybody. So they were given special instructions. But the instructions for the rest of the ummah, they're in Surah An-Nur. So the special status of the women, the wives of the Prophet ﷺ, by and large, that's discussed in Surah Al-Ahzab. So what we've done is we've kind of conflated these things and made them into using that to generalize women are supposed to stay inside. But they didn't stay inside. There's enough evidence that women even joined the Sahaba in battle. There's enough evidence that they were interacting with the men. There's enough evidence they were traveling together. The Hajj ritual itself breaks. This is the most sacred ritual. Shouldn't there be a women's section for Tawaf? Why was there never one? Because they were a part of society. And the thing is that Allah gave us this deen based on fitrah. There's some natural things we're supposed to be inclined towards, like decency, the way a person dresses. Allah gave khimar to the women, not because it protects them from they're protected from the eyes of men, but actually they're protected from their own desire to show off, actually. If you study Surah An-Nur, that's what it's talking about. So once they observe these principles of haya, of modesty, of engagement, like the sisters of, or the two sisters in Madian who were getting the water from the well, they're engaged in a hostile non-Muslim environment and they're working, right? So women being in a public space, women fulfilling a certain role that normally is associated with men, the Quran never condemned it. The Quran never spoke against it. And how somehow we think this is a modern idea. It's not a modern idea. It's a classical idea, and if you actually study Islamic history, you'll see throughout our tradition that this was a non-issue. And even in contemporary life, I like examples like Malaysia and Indonesia. I like these examples because these are very vibrant, very committed, very educated Muslim societies where women play a great role in the society while holding on to their Islam and their Islamic principles. It's a beautiful thing to see. And there's no reason for someone to think that's not supposed to be the case. Or you're not supposed to be in, oh, women are meant to be, oh, doctors and teachers and nothing else. No, you can be a civil servant. Why not? What's wrong with you being what's wrong with you being a lawyer? What's wrong with you being a professor? What's wrong with you being a research scientist? There's nothing preventing you from any of it. And this is the same advice I would give my own daughters. Pursue whatever it is that Allah has given you. And if we don't do this, we're taking more than 50% of our talent pool, and we're basically telling them, all your education, all your mind, all your potential is useless. There's nothing you can do with it, you know? And then the next argument people give is, well, if they do these things, how will they be good mothers? The same way you're doing all these things and you're still supposed to be a good father. That's a non-argument. There are plenty of people that women used to work in the farms and get water from wells and all this other stuff while they were still mothers. They were doing trade, husband died, they have to do trade, they have to make a living. You think every situation is normal? Every situation is standard? There are plenty of single women, divorced women that had to take care of their children and had to make ends meet and worked hard and raise their kids. So this idea that somehow they are lesser mothers or they're too busy with their career, therefore they can't be mothers, I think that idea is silly. And the people who make that idea don't even know what it means to be a father, really. Because they don't understand what kind of partnership it takes to raise a child. They just think, oh, that's a mother's responsibility. No, the personality of a child is as dependent on the mother as it is on the nourishment of a father. You need both. So a lot of times the arguments that are presented to make such a case are very problematic. This young lady even says, I'm made to feel small, right? And that's exactly the feeling. Why am I being made to feel that because of my gender, I can't contribute, I have nothing to offer, or the role in which I can offer something is very limited? No. So long as you're following the principles of this deen, then the area in which you can serve, the scope in which you can serve, is completely an open playing field. It's completely open to you. And I would encourage you to pursue it. And I would encourage you to even study your deen deeper and look at the arguments and look at the counter arguments, and don't just listen to what I'm saying. Look at the evidences yourself, study the history yourself, and you'll be amazed and empowered at how many women, on the backs of how many women, just like men, this deen has been carried. It didn't reach us just because of the contributions of men. It reached us because of the contributions of men and women. So those are my few thoughts on this issue. I pray that our daughters really feel the sense of empowerment they've always felt throughout our history, and somehow they've lost that. You know, last comment about this. They say, oh, you're abandoning traditional values. People who say you're abandoning traditional values, I would counter argue, maybe you should study the tradition a little better yourself before you represent traditional values, because if you actually studied our history, this is not what you would be saying. So those are just some thoughts. Allahu Ta'ala alam, but I hope that helps.